When most people hear the name Pythagoras, they think of a triangle and a school equation, a theorem long buried in textbooks and forgotten notebooks. But that's just the surface, the visible ripple of a far deeper sea. The real Pythagoras was no mere mathematician. He was an initiate of the Egyptian mysteries, a prophet of the soul, a master of the invisible. Few know this, but he founded an initiatic school, a sanctuary cloaked in silence, where disciples would spend years voiceless, learning not through speech but through stillness. What was taught there wasn't meant for the masses. It was dangerous, powerful, sacred, forbidden. In this video, we venture into what remains hidden, the teachings that never made it. Into classrooms, the secret wisdom of Pythagoras, about the soul, the divine nature of numbers, the music of the spheres, and the soul's long journey through worlds seen and unseen. A map to liberation buried beneath centuries of rationalism and noise. Long before he was remembered for a geometric trick, Pythagoras was revered for something deeper, his listening. He believed the entire cosmos was moved by vibration, that everything, every being, every breath is sound. Not audible sound, but an invisible harmony that sustains the stars. According to ancient voices like Iamblichus and Philolaus, he taught that the planets sang as they moved, each celestial body emitting a note, creating together the music of the spheres. We don't hear it, they said, because we've always been immersed in it, like fish, blind to the water that carries them. To grasp this vision, we must unlearn what we think we know about numbers. For Pythagoras, numbers were not cold abstractions, they were living forces. 1 was unity, the source. 2 brought separation, duality. 3 bridged them with harmony. 4 gave shape to the material world. Each number held meaning. Each was a key. He saw this not in theory but in practice. Watching strings of lyres, he discovered that pleasing sounds followed exact proportions. 2-1, 2-4-3. Harmony wasn't just beautiful, it was structured. These same proportions appeared in nature, in the stars, in the body. The cosmos, it turned out, was a symphony, and he, one of its first listeners. Pythagoras wasn't simply a scientist of the visible, he was a mystic of the hidden. His teachings weren't limited to the page. He used sound itself as a spiritual path. Certain melodies, he said, could calm the storm of the mind, purify the body, even heal illness. Before sleep, specific music to cleanse the day. Upon waking, tones to align the spirit with the morning light. Music was medicine. Music was prayer. Music was initiation. And now, over 2 millennia later, science is just beginning to echo him. Physics whispers that vibration is at the root of matter. Biology explores how cells respond to frequency. Sound therapy and healing tones re-emerge. But Pythagoras already knew. He knew when it was dangerous to say the universe had a soul. His teachings on cosmic harmony were not just about sound. They were about how to live. For Pythagoras, to live well was to live in tune with breath, with nature, with one's own soul. He spoke of balance not as a moral ideal but as a state of resonance. When we are in harmony, things flow. When we are out of tune, we suffer. That's why he placed so much emphasis on silence, because silence is the first note. He believed that true wisdom isn't transmitted in words, but in vibration, in what is felt, not said. The deepest truths, he said, are found in the silence between sounds. Maybe that's why even today we say, that resonated with me, because something inside us still remembers. He saw the universe as a great harp and each soul as a string. When that string is tuned, it sings. When it's not, it aches. And through discipline, meditation, and music, we retune ourselves, becoming a living part of the celestial song. But Pythagoras didn't stop with sound. He taught that the body was not the end, but a beginning, a temple. Yes, but a temporary one. He believed in the transmigration of the soul, metempsychosis, the idea that the soul is immortal and moves from one body to another, life after life, like a flame passing from one vessel to the next. It carries impressions from previous incarnations, memories that shape us, even if we forget them. This vision wasn't invented, it was inherited. He studied in Egypt for years, learning from priests, who taught that the human being is composed of multiple layers: the body, the energy, the spirit, the shadow. After death, each part takes a different path. He was also influenced by the Orphic mysteries in Greece, which taught that the soul is trapped in the body, not as a curse but as a chance to grow. For Pythagoras, the body was a prison only when we didn't know how to use it. It was also a laboratory, a place to refine, to test, to temper the soul. The Pythagoreans believed the soul had to be purified in order to escape the cycle of rebirth. And that purification didn't come through rituals performed in temples. It came through daily, disciplined living, self-control, self-knowledge, a nonviolent diet, measured speech, thoughtful action, music as medicine, philosophy as practice. This was their inner alchemy, not the transformation of lead into gold, but of ignorance into wisdom, not the manipulation of outer matter, but the transmutation of the soul. And it was also a lesson in humility. You could be a king in one life and a peasant in the next. A philosopher today, a tree tomorrow. Consciousness, he taught, resides in all forms of life. That's why he and his followers abstained from eating animals, not for health, but for compassion. Today, these teachings still echo in traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism, but in the Greek world of his time, these ideas were radical, nearly heretical. To claim that the soul didn't die with the body was already controversial. To suggest it could return as a plant, an animal, or another human being, that was revolutionary. Still, Pythagoras held fast. The purpose of life, he taught, is not merely to live, but to free oneself. To free oneself from ignorance, from the unconscious cycle of desires, from the prison of forgetfulness. And that liberation happens through anamnesis, the soul's remembering of its divine nature. He believed that the soul knows everything, but forgets it at birth. And philosophy, music, number, and silence are tools to help it remember. He wasn't teaching mathematics. He was offering a path, a spiritual method to stop being a prisoner and become a pilgrim of the soul. The school he founded in Croton, southern Italy, was no ordinary academy. It was a temple disguised as a philosophical society. There, men and women from across the Greek world came not to learn facts, but to transform their lives. But initiation did not come easily. To join, candidates had to pass through silence, weeks, months, even years of it. Their task was only to listen. Because as Pythagoras taught, before one can speak wisely, one must learn to listen deeply. Silence was not punishment. It was preparation. Only after this silent initiation would they receive the first teachings, and even then, not all at once. Wisdom was given in proportion to inner maturity. Those who passed were admitted into the inner order, where life became ritual. Sleep and waking were regulated. Food was simple. Study included mathematics, astronomy, music, and meditation. They lived communally, yet cultivated deep individuality. It was a kind of monastery, but without a religion. There were no spectacles, only spiritual practices. One of them was the contemplation of the pentagram, a sacred geometric form. Another was the oath sworn upon the tetractys, a triangle formed by the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, which add up to 10. To them, this symbol wasn't just mathematical, it was metaphysical. It represented the structure of all existence. To swear upon it was to devote oneself to truth on every level of being. But what made the Pythagorean school truly unique was its commitment to forming whole human beings. Knowledge without ethics, Pythagoras said, is empty. That's why they trained not just the mind, but the heart. They cultivated justice, temperance, courage, moderation, not as virtues to discuss, but as ways of living. Many members of the school went on to become leaders, advisors, and reformers in their cities. But power breeds suspicion. Over time, the Pythagoreans were seen as a secretive elite, a threat. Tensions rose. The school was attacked. The temple was burned. Some disciples were killed. Pythagoras fled, and with him many of the teachings vanished. What survived came to us in fragments, phrases, symbols, echoes in stone. But the legacy remained, not as an institution but as a vibration, a frequency still humming in the background of Western thought. In truth, the order didn't die, it went inward. Into memory, into mystery. And today, when we walk into a quiet room, or hear a melody that stirs our soul, or recognize a sacred pattern in the stars, we are remembering something ancient, something true. Because Pythagoras never wanted to be worshipped, he wanted to be understood. And to understand him, we need more than intellect, we need silence. We live in a world of noise. But he taught that real knowledge is found in what cannot be heard, in the vibration that has no sound, in the number that's never written. The triangle between body, soul, and spirit still pulses, waiting to be seen again. The forbidden teachings of Pythagoras weren't destroyed. They simply hid themselves in architecture and breath in the hush before song. If you felt that resonance, if something inside you stirred while listening, then maybe, just maybe, you're ready to walk that ancient path again. Thank you for watching.